Deity of Christ in the 2nd century. This video is really just to talk about the introduction to this topic so that you can understand the modern landscape of what is often said, even though it is historically devoid of fact. It's not true, but the study of the deity of Christ is whether Jesus is truly God and whether this is universally believed by the church before 325 AD at the Council of Nicaea. Now, I'm going to introduce what I call the Da Vinci Code argument. The Da Vinci Code argument you've either heard, maybe as a Christian, as a non-Christian, or maybe you've even made it, that there are these other gospels and there is this other view of Jesus that is less divine and more human, and that the divine view of Jesus, that he is God in the flesh, was not really solidified and didn't really become the norm of understanding for the church until 325 at the Council of Nicaea. And they'll usually say, okay, they chose books to go into the Bible, they chose books not to go into the Bible, and then they declared Jesus God. And everybody knows this. Okay? You can't know something that isn't true. That's not what happened. The Council of Nicaea was about the debate over the doctrine, the specifics of the doctrine of the deity of Jesus and his nature, of whether he was created by God as the greatest being, or whether he was always God from eternity past and was God in his nature and not an uncreated being. And anyway, and nothing to do with the biblical canon. The biblical canon is already understood by the church, is already accepted of what the books of the New Testament and the Bible are. It has nothing, and the Council of Nicaea, even if it wasn't, the Council of Nicaea has nothing to do with the selection of books of Scripture. So that's not true, even though it's something that it's quote unquote everybody knows. But anyway, let me read something from the Da Vinci Code, which is a fictional book that is supposed to be the fiction of what everybody knows, but the only true thing in it is in the first page. Even its quote unquote fact page is not true. But the only thing true in the Da Vinci Code is the opening line in the first page or so that says everything in this book is fiction. Nothing in it is true, even its so-called fact sheet in the front of the book. What one of the characters says, Sir Lee Teabing, he's this doctor, he's this guy who kind of has all these ideas figured out. He's played by Ian McKellen in the movie. He says, until that moment in history, I see it, 325, Jesus was viewed by his followers as a mortal prophet, a great and powerful man, but a man nonetheless, a mortal. Again, another quote, Jesus' establishment as the Son of God was officially proposed and voted on by the Council of Nicaea because Constantine upgraded Jesus' status among almost 4 centuries after Jesus' death. Thousands of documents already existed chronicling his life as a mortal man. Now he says these other gospels, which are the so-called Gnostic gospels, which I could do another video on another time. But basically that Constantine and others gave Jesus this upgrade of status to divinity, to the Son of God, to being a divine or a deity, and that earlier followers, that this earlier church really viewed Jesus as just a mortal, a man, but a powerful prophet and nothing more. So what is the real Jesus? What is the real historical argument? So what we'd expect to see from this is that up until this point in history, the church did not universally believe that Jesus was God. We'd expect to see some debate, maybe, but we would see the absence of language that refers to Jesus as God. And that's actually not what we see at all. And I'll explain that in further videos. So here's the Da Vinci Code argument in a sentence. This is not the truth. This is the argument of what I call the Da Vinci Code argument, made by many. The early church did not view Jesus as God in the flesh, but rather came to that view later when spiritual and political elites removed certain books from the biblical canon at the Council of Nicaea in 325 and left in others that made Jesus look divine. Okay, that's the argument. It's not true, but it's a narrative that you have to understand. The narrative is that that the Bible is corrupted, it cannot be trusted, and that there's these other gospels floating around out there that are more accurate, that give a fuller picture at the very least to who Jesus really is or was. And that's not true either. And we'll look at those books at another time. And then number two, that the church did not believe the historic, accepted, and orthodox view that Jesus was divine. That is, that he was truly God, truly man, that he was God in the flesh. And this argument is made by, I've heard it made by Catholics, it's made by Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, who don't believe in the divinity of Christ and actually follow an Arian view that was declared to be heretical at that Council of Nicaea, and Muslims. They all argue this because the things they hold in common, except for Catholics. I've heard a few Catholics make this argument, but they come at it from a different angle, saying, see, this is why you need the church to keep these things in order by the magisterium. But Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Muslims, and the Restoration Fellowship, you could throw in as well, the kind of Church of God, but non-monolithically, meaning not everybody believes this in the Church of God, use this argument because their systems need to work on a distrust of the Bible, at least in part, so that their scriptures can fill in, and they need to believe in a less than divine, less than God Jesus. Catholics believe in a divine Jesus, to their credit. They have an orthodox view of the divinity of Christ. Where they stumble is the authority of Scripture and the authority of the church. And so their idea of the church is the magisterium has held this view. So they say, okay, well, see, the church was the one really driving all this. Anyway, so that's the argument that's made. It's the Da Vinci Code argument. The Da Vinci Code is fictional, but the narrative type of the Da Vinci Code is largely believed as fact. Again, you'll be told, everybody knows this. This is history. Everyone knows, even though it's not true.